Happy Friday, everybody. I am back. So sorry that we didn't have an episode last week. I was a little under the weather, had the flu, but this guy right here, he said, no problem, we can do it next week. So I'm very super thankful that he decided to come on an episode of Full Court Press. I'm your host, Courtney Mims. If you're a Hog fan, you recognize the guest I have this week, former Hog Scotty Thurman. And Scotty, thank you so much for wanting to do this. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad you're feeling better, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, we are glad to have you and get your thoughts on this Arkansas men's basketball team this year. Let's talk a little bit about what happened Wednesday night. The last time I was actually on the show, believe it or not, I had Pat Bradley on, Scotty, and we were talking about the Kentucky game, and it hadn't happened yet. But Pat was very optimistic. He was like, anything can happen in the SEC this year. And so, they went and beat Kentucky at Rupp Arena. Then they went and beat Texas in Austin. That was a crazy environment. They came back home. They almost, the comeback was real in that Alabama game. They almost were able to upset Alabama here at Bud Walton Arena. But look, they bounced back on Wednesday night, getting a win over LSU, 70-58, the final score. And Scotty, look, this team, they've been through the roller coaster of a season already, and we're just still in SEC play trying to roll out the rest of February here, but this team knows adversity. They started out really not good in the SEC, 0-5, and then they've started to turn things around, and now they're back in the conversation when you talk about the NCAA tournament. They're still trying to pad that resume some more. But what did you think about this team, especially watching them through the SEC slate? And now they're starting to turn things around. What are your overall impressions so far of this team?
I think they've made a tremendous adjustment, having lost Boogie Flan at the time that they lost him, especially with big games coming up. And I think what you've seen is a combination of guys stepping up. Carter Knox has started to knock down shots. John L. Davis is playing extremely well. Billy Richmond's energy is contagious, it appears, and so he's playing at a high level. Big Z, averaging 25, 26 over the last two games, shooting 57 from three. And then Thero kind of doing what he does. And I think DJ Wagner's done a great job of running the point for this club. And I think, they've got a tough schedule ahead, but I think they've shown that they can go in and make some big splashes with those two wins. And like you said, at Texas and at Kentucky. And so they're going to need some more of that these next few games.
I like your overview there of the guys stepping up. And a lot of people thought this team was dead in the water when Boogie Flan went down. People were like, this is your bread and butter, and he's gone. What's going to happen? How is this team going to adjust? But you can talk to this. You've played, at the collegiate level at Arkansas. And so you can talk about, what as a player, the mindset when your back is against the wall, when nobody believes in you, when people on national TV are saying, yeah, we don't think Arkansas is going to make the tournament. Do you think it's something that has fueled this team and you can kind of see the turning point of these guys going, we all have to step up now?
I think it's definitely shown in their play recently. You think about it, they're 4-2 over the last 6 games. That's pretty impressive. Obviously, you would have loved to get the win versus Alabama. We're having a completely different conversation. But, I think these guys have done a good job when you think about Boogie Flan and the talent that he is. And as you mentioned, no one really expected much after that. But I think that's discrediting some of the other guys who are good players as well. And I think what it's caused to happen is that they're depending on one another a lot more. I think the guys are sharing the ball a lot more. Not that, Boogie wasn't sharing it, but I think he just demanded it a lot more in his hands. And I think now it's moving a little bit more. Guys are getting the opportunity to touch. You see Nelly Davis scoring in a variety of ways and not just standing in the corner. I think you got Big Z scoring at the rim a little bit more and shooting threes. And I think you'll see guys' overall game starting to show.
Well, I like what you said there about guys kind of stepping into a new role and really thriving in that new role. Like you mentioned there, Nelly, that was one of the biggest things I talked about on this show. And even with Pat, where it's like, I don't think Nelly Davis was in a comfortable role before. Now with Boogie out and DJ playing the point, you don't have him in the corner just shooting threes. He's a much more dynamic scorer than that. And we could go on and on about that. But I want to get your thoughts on Big Z and the explosion that we've seen from him. He joked after that LSU when they said, you look so much more comfortable in the paint. And he goes, yeah, people people said I shoot too many threes and I wanted to prove them wrong. I love that comment. It was so great. But I kind of was like in that press conference going, Scotty, I have to admit something. I was one of those people saying, you're 7'2". Stop shooting threes as much as you are. I know you're a good three-point shooter, but you can do other things. And now I'm so happy to see him be a presence inside as well. 25 points in that win over LSU. If he doesn't get 25 points, I don't think they win that ball game. I mean, he had to play at the level that he did for them to win that game. 4 block shots. I mean, talk about what you have seen from him as a player and how well he has just taken over this role of being a scorer for this team now with Boogie Flam being out.
Well, I think he's made a tremendous adjustment. I think early on, he did probably shoot too many threes. I think he depended on them. But now you see him with the backwards dunk at the rim, uh, blocking shots, being more of a presence. And I mean, me personally, I don't have a problem with him shooting threes. Obviously, I'm not Coach Calipari, but he's shooting 57%. I think you got to let him shoot them. But at the same time, on this team, and really on any team when you're that size, you got to be able to play in the paint some too. And I think he's starting to figure out how to come up with a balance of both.
I love that you say I don't mind him shooting threes. I know I'm just terrible in that when you have a guy of that size and that stature, I'm like, you need to be a force in the paint as well. You got to have that presence and realize you are 7'2", dude. You are. I promise you can be a physical presence down low. And so I love that you kind of mentioned that. Somebody else I want to ask you about, Scotty, is Billy Richmond. I know that when you look at his stats, I mean, we could even go in that LSU game. And Billy Richmond, he only had 4 points. He had 3 rebounds. He had 4 assists. But he's a guy that when he comes off of the bench, he is a spark plug for this team. He comes in and he does everything absolutely necessary and sparks them. I mean, he was the reason that they went on that little 6-0 run, and they never relinquished that lead after that to LSU. What do you see from him as a player, talking about, just bringing up, you're a coach as well, exactly, you've been around this game for so long. What do you see from him, and do you think he's a guy that could be absolutely necessary down the stretch for the Razorbacks?
Oh, I think he's definitely necessary for the Razorbacks down the stretch. I think one of the things that you'll never see on the stat sheet is his energy. I mean, you can just see when he comes to the game, the pace of the players just kind of pick up. You can almost see, I haven't had the opportunity to attend a game this year, but I can even see it watching on television that it looks like the energy in the arena goes up, and that's a credit to him. And so I think his stats are his stats. I mean, he's going to have some games where he gets some scores, but the driving to the basket, finishing at the rim, the types of points that he's getting, the emphatic dunks that he's coming up with. I think, when you make those type of plays, I think it makes guys want to have energy. Guys want to be able to play with you and try to, reach that same level. And then if you got 5 guys on the floor doing that at the same time, that's when you become pretty dangerous.
Well, that's the whole point that we've kind of made about this team from the start is like, I wanted to see some more energy and some more energy in these ball games. And that's what we weren't kind of seeing early on in the SEC. Now we're starting to see it. I mean, do you almost think, Scotty, it's kind of, and I've made this comparison before, but the Patrick Ewing theory, one of your best players goes down and now everybody has to step up and you're kind of in this situation that you didn't think you were ever going to be in, and that's motivated everybody else to go, yeah, we can do this. Our backs are against the wall. Nobody thinks we can do this. I mean, is that kind of what we're seeing with this team? A little bit of the Patrick Ewing effect?
I would like to think, most of these guys probably barely know who Patrick Ewing is due to their age. Obviously, I'm familiar with him, but I think, your analogy is probably correct in terms of the fact that their back is against the wall. And I'll go a step further in just sharing that, obviously when you play high school or college basketball or, professional basketball for that matter at a high level, you're always going to be concerned with what people are saying, whether you say it or not. There's this whole thing about don't read your press clippings. Well, today, good or bad, these kids are going to grab their phones and they're going to see it all on Twitter and all on social media, the good and the bad. And I think sometimes, you got people that can process that the wrong way. And fortunately for this group, it appears that they've been able to take some of the things that are being said and go into the locker room and use them as fuel. And it's good to see.
It's funny you mentioned press clippings because you guys use that to fuel your team back in '94. I remember you guys looking at what some of those national media members were saying and go, whoa, what are you saying about us? And I kind of feel like, in a way, you can relate a little bit of this team to that. Not maybe in the same exact way, just of the mindset right now of going, we're seeing what people are saying. We understand that. We're not in the conversation like we want to be when it comes to March Madness and the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, I mean, getting in the minds of you were there once, you know exactly what that mindset is, and going, hold on, wait a second. I mean, I don't know if Coach Cal's in the locker room using it for fuel like Nolan Richardson was, but I would think he's using some of it for sure to help fuel these guys. Scotty, you watch a lot of basketball. You know exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about the SEC. And I have fully said on this show before that if you don't think this is the best league overall this year, you're crazy. You haven't been watching the games. I know there's been some jokes going around that the SEC, they're just 500 in league play right now. And there's a lot of jokes about it, but it truly is. There's no gimmies. That every game is going to be a ball game. You saw that with LSU, especially in the first half. And so moving forward, how do you go into each game, or how does this team go into each game knowing that it's going to be a dogfight, knowing that they've got some really tough battles ahead? Texas A&M this weekend for one on Saturday, and then Auburn in Alabama at their place. I mean, that is going to be a crazy environment. How do you go into each game and kind of prepare yourself just knowing that it's going to be a dogfight?
Well, I think you just, shape your mind around the fact that you just recently did it, at Texas, at Rupp. I mean, so this weekend, obviously, the rankings may be different, but at the end of the day, it's still 10-foot basket, 94-foot floor, 5-on-5, and a bench and coaches. And so I think the game has to be played, not necessarily in the media, not on, social media for that matter. I think it just comes down to the effort that the guys are going to continue to display. If they can continue to play as hard as they're playing right now, I think they've got a chance to beat anyone.
They definitely do. And they need some guys, I feel like, as well to kind of step up. And Jonas Adu is one that's been a player that's been criticized for some of his performances over the past few games. But if you watch that LSU game, and you can kind of talk to this, Scotty, his defensive effort, again, it may not be a leap off the stat sheet, right, at the end of the night, but his defensive effort early on was great. It was great to see that from him. And they're going to need him, especially to play like that down the stretch, and especially to give Big Z a couple of breathers. He needs some breathers. He can't, just keep giving full effort for a full 40 minutes. He does need a break. And so getting Jonas to play at a level like that is needed. Do you like what you're seeing from him and the flashes you saw on Wednesday night from him, at least defensively? I know offensively, I think that's where people want to see him step up a little bit more. But look, you can't ask for that all the way, especially that he's not been 100% this year.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to factor in the injuries. I mean, I think that's definitely been a factor. I think there's also, people talk about the transfer portal, but sometimes it takes an adjustment for a player who goes from one system being utilized in one facet and then going to a new program. I think there's been some of that as well. Me personally, I watched him at Tennessee. I don't ever really remember him being a scorer per se. He always was a putback guy, catch it at the rim, finish around the basket. I think he struggled a little bit with the back to the basket stuff because he's never really been utilized in that manner. But I think when you look at the fact that he's always been a shot blocker, always been a rebounder, and I think if he gets back to that and playing with the high level energy that he's always had, I think then he'll end up with the points that he needs for us to be able to go out with wins versus as opposed to needing him to score.
And I like what you said there as well. Like that's not what we really saw him at in the role that he was asked to play in Rick Barnes' system at Tennessee. And I agree with you completely. I just also like to see the effort from him. I mean, there was one play where he was diving on the court, trying to create a turnover, trying to, dive for a loose ball. And to me, that's where you're like, and I know you as well, being knowing what it's like being on the coach's side of things too, is just that, hey, that's the effort you want to see from a guy like that, right? Because that's what Billy Richmond, we know his stats, he's not leaping off the stat sheet every night, but what he adds is that effort, that drive, that motivation. Do you love seeing that from these guys? And almost, it's kind of, it's been recent, really, because in the first part of SEC play, I'll be quite frank with you, Scotty, I didn't see that from these guys. Now you're starting to see it, right?
Right. I think the energy levels definitely picked up overall across the board. I think Jonas could definitely benefit from just paying attention to the guys that are around him and feeding off that energy as well. You know, we've got to factor in he was a preseason all SEC player. And so, you know, he's got to get somewhat back to that level for this team to be able to get to the tournament. Because if you look at the last 7 games, I think you got 4 ranked opponents. Obviously, you know, the next game is the biggest game, but you still got to be able to look down the road and try to project out. And I mean, you know, 4 ranked teams out of 7. Not that those other teams aren't very good as well, but you know, they got a lot of work to do, and they're going to need all hands on deck, especially from experienced guys like Adu.
Absolutely. You talk about what's coming up, and let's finish with just a couple of things looking at this team holistically. I know everybody, it's all about March, right? And you know that. I mean, it's the drive of these players. They want to be playing in March Madness. They want to be playing in that NCAA tournament. You know, a lot of people have said there's a magic number of wins maybe in the SEC, and maybe, you know, getting to like 7 wins for this team would be really, really good in a league that's playing at such a high level right now, like the SEC. Where do you see what do you think this team needs to do? Obviously win and get a couple more statement wins. But do you feel like, okay, if they can go and get 3-4 more wins, they're in a really good spot? Where's kind of the magic point for you and this ball team?
I think, you know, you got to go 5-2 in your next 7, in my opinion. You know, and hopefully get a decent seed in the SEC tournament and win 1 more. But I think if you go 5-2 and 4 of those against ranked opponents, you know, I think you got a chance, especially if you see another ranked opponent in the SEC tournament. And God forbid you go on a run in the SEC tournament and win 2 games, and I think they would probably be in. But it's going to take a lot of work, though. And I think they're up for the challenge, though. I mean, they don't really have anything to lose. I think the expectations have been up and down all season. You know, everyone thought coming in, you know, it was about the talent level and the whole Coach Calipari aura. But as you find out, everybody's got good players everywhere. And so it just comes down to things meshing. And I think, you know, they've got a positive slate so far, because I'm just looking at the 4-2 that they've gone over the last 6 games. I've kind of not worried so much about early in the season, because if you think about it, when Coach Cal came on board, at the time he was here, I don't think there was like 1 player on the roster. So, you know, when you factor in where we are now, 1 player on the roster to now, you know, I think it's definitely positive.
You don't get enough credit for that. You know, people just glaze over that fact all the time, but you do have to remember that, yes, that Trevin Brazile was really the only guy, and he didn't even know he was coming back. When he took over the job, Trevin Brazile was still in the transfer portal, and Trevin came to him and was like, yeah, I actually want to come back and play. That was it. There was nobody else, and so I think we glaze over that a lot, but there has been a complete and utter, he's had to come in and build this program, basically this team from the ground up. And so it's been amazing to see what they've been able to do, and especially the turnaround. For you, what has been your overall assessment of Coach Cal in year 1? Kind of talking a little bit about that, just more in depth. Have you kind of really appreciated the job he's done coming in here? And I know there were some people that were like, man, bad SEC start. This is we're out on Coach Cal. I'm like, guys, he hasn't even been here a whole year yet, you know. So what has been your assessment as a former Hog of the job that Coach Cal has done here?
I don't know if I'm qualified enough to grade him, but I would say, you know, given the fact of when he came in and me having the opportunity to coach college and understanding the scheduling and all those things that come into play in terms of timelines for having signees and all those types of things. I mean, I think he's done a pretty good job. Obviously, it's not the job, you know, as Razorback fans, the only job we think about is winning it. So, I mean, he hadn't had the opportunity yet to even get the team to the tournament. So we've still got games to play. So I don't really look too far down the road, nor do I give him too much flack for the way it started because, I mean, this is year one. And I mean, you've got to be realistic in year one. And so my goal is for them to make the tournament. And if he can make the tournament, I think that would be an incredible feat considering where he was when he first arrived.
Well, it would be successful, honestly, because a lot of people said you have a Hall of Fame coach coming in. They know Coach Cal gets to the tournament, and so that is the expectation, right? After that, it's kind of, well, we'll see what happens, who you get, and I mean, I go back to what Nolan says. There's a lot of luck involved too. Like, where are you getting seeded, and who's in your region, and all of those things. If that all is favorable, a team like Arkansas could make it further than a lot of people expected. You know, we've seen that in years past with Arkansas teams where if it's favorable, if you get lucky, you can make it further than you kind of think you did, or you can run into a really good team that's hot at the end of the year right off the bat in the first round and get knocked out. So I know a lot of people understand that on the coach's side of things when it comes to the tournament. Scotty, I really appreciate you for joining us today. I'll end with this. Do you think this team can make the tournament? I know you said they have a shot. Do you think they can get there? Do you think they can do? Can they make a resume that's good enough to get them in?
I definitely think they can. I won't go on record saying that they will. I'm very hopeful
Yes.
that they will. I do think that, it's going to be a challenge considering the fact of what they've got coming up. But I think if they play with the effort that they've displayed over these last 6 games rather, I think anything's possible. And I never will count them out because I've loved the effort that they've shown over the last few games. And if that carries over, make a few shots, a couple lucky bounces, a free throw here, lay up there, you could be in it.
You absolutely could. And anything, seriously, I go back to what Pat Bradley said just 2 weeks ago. Anything can happen. And he's proven that to be very true because anything can happen. And we've seen the turnaround that this team has been able to do so far. You just hope to keep that lightning in a bottle, right? Keep it going and hopefully win a couple more games, boost that resume, and then you never know what could happen. We could be talking about a different situation in just a few weeks. Scotty, I really appreciate you for coming on the show and joining me and talking some Hog hoops today for Full Court Press. And give a little update before we go. What are you up to? What are you doing right now so the fans know?
Well, right now I am kind of in a transitional phase. I'm spending a lot of time with my daughter, who's playing volleyball at the U of A, hanging out with my 2 grandsons and my son who works at the U of A, and I'm investing in real estate right now.
Nice.
Remain flexible with my time a little bit.
Well, that is awesome. I know Romani. I just caught up with Romani a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just telling her, she seems so happy being in Arkansas and, just having that legacy, the Thurman legacy go forward. And she's doing a great job. I mean, in her first season here, she did a bang-up job, and I'm sure she's excited for what that team will do moving forward as well.
We're definitely excited about the upcoming volleyball season, and, we're going to try to cheer these Hogs on for this season prior to. So we look forward to hopefully seeing this team in the dance, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scotty. Again, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Full Court Press. We'll see you next week to talk more Hog basketball.